Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare.
What a perfect way to connect with the source of energy.
You know, I was gonna bring something up, man.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Oh yeah, I meant to bring this up. You're gonna like this.
Yeah.
You've heard me talk about Prabhupada. So he was basically the guy who. So like in Hinduism, there's different sects of there's people that worship Shiva. Like the sadhus. They cover themselves in ashes and they worship Shiva, basically the dark force of the universe. And then there's the Hare Krishnas. You've heard of those? They shave their heads bald.
Okay.
They wear saffron robes, and they get up at like 5 every morning and chant Hare Krishna.
Wow.
Yeah, but Prabhupada was like the founder of that sect of devotional yoga to Krishna, and he said something really interesting about. He was like, "It's so crazy that, like, we think that we have to put ourselves in metal boxes to go to like different planets." He said that's a crazy thing. It's like if we weren't
Holy shit, I see what he's saying.
if we weren't such a materialistic culture, like all you have to do is astral project there. Like
whoa.
Yeah.
I love that. Couldn't have been worded any better.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Us coming up on this very holy Kratom and Kava ceremony, I have many things that is
a great many things.
A great many things. I use that term so much I took the great out this time. I don't want to sound too much like a broken record. But fuck it. Those are words that LaVey has used a lot. And, he's one of the best guys ever. One of the things I've really been moved by just in the past 10 minutes coming up on this is to ask ourselves, what is the true point of us even turning this on and having these conversations? It's to attempt to, talk about these truths that we've learned from plants or teachers. But those truths are very complex.
Yes, they are.
And they're
it's
very
multi-layered. It's this and it's that. That's what the mushroom tells me. It's this, but it's also this. It's a paradox. We have to learn to live in the paradox of things, like in between.
Yeah.
So
what I've learned is just this
and
ceremony,
accepting the mystery too. That is so important.
I may have already kind of changed my opinion on this a little bit, and I'll tell you what, I said something last video, but I actually see something a little different now. I remember talking about I go from one subject to the next, but what I actually believe is, you imagine a tree, you have this source, all these different branches, you go into the ground, all these different roots, and what we're doing is covering a little bit instead of staying on one branch.
Right.
And it's not necessarily ranting, going from one thing to the other. I mean, really,
exploring different branches of the tree.
What does that really come from? I mean, that's something that culture has added in.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't make any sense because he jumps from one topic to the other.
Like the idea that culture peddles that, we have to be completely coherent in what we believe. You know what I'm saying? Like, we should explore a lot of these things. And a lot of these things that we've been talking about do connect to each other.
You know what I think, man? So when I was in Books a Million the other day, I never actually do this. I hardly ever initiate a conversation. But there was a gentleman and his girlfriend that was looking like the witchcraft section and various other philosophies, and he she asked him, she said, "What does shamanism mean?" And I just couldn't help it. I turned around and I said,
"I will tell you what
excuse me, good ma'am, I said, I'll tell you precisely what that is. I said that to summarize this in a very short fashion is guidance from the sacred plants. And
Truly.
she just, like, she was really nice, and her husband or whatever was really nice as well. They burst out laughing. They're like, dude. He said, I kind of know what shamanism is. He said, but I didn't know how to explain it. He said, dude, you literally just hit the nail right on the coffin. I was like, man, and it hit me. I've never
That's really the source of shamanism is they use plants to navigate consciousness.
So we've talked in various videos before that we don't like this idea of having to grasp on to a particular belief, a name. But actually, after that incident happened, I started thinking, man, honestly, I think I do really have a name, and you do too. I think that we actually practice shamanism.
In a sense,
Honestly, a shamanism mixed with paganism.
Yeah.
Honestly, with magic.
Which I think shamanism is intertwined with paganism.
I think shamanism is probably the source of what we actually practice.
Right. Because paganism is a nature oriented religion. It's not, because a lot of religions that are newer and popular, like Christianity,
they were very magical people. These shamans are very magical.
This idea that man is a fallen creature, I think that is a very damaging thing. I don't think we're, in this, we fell into history, but I think inherently we have all the tools we need to be vital and to reach our full potential. Yeah. The spirit is inside of us. That's another thing. Monotheism externalizes spirit. I wonder how exactly these Christians and whatnot believe. Like there's a lot of them are kind of materialistic.
I want to know.
Yeah.
You never explain the things that I'm very interested in. Okay. They never do.
No, they don't.
I mean, that sounds like you're interested in me. No.
What do you want me to explain?
These Christians, they never explain these things that I'm really curious about. If you are such a spiritual person,
no mystery.
They don't like that term, but if you're such a godly person,
they don't like the word spiritual, do they?
They hate it. I've mentioned this to
I've heard so many Christians say, Christianity is not a religion, it's the truth. What the fuck?
Okay, look.
That is insane.
This just happened the other day.
Yeah, it's not a religion.
You know the woman I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So this woman, she grew up in a very small, even smaller community than what we live in now, and they simply accepted a tradition that was huge in this area, and will get fighting.
Oh yeah.
Angry and riled up if you mention anything else. If we was to mention we wouldn't even think about mentioning Aleister Crowley's magical writings because, it could lead to physical major conflict. And, this person has caused a great deal of mental distress, this person, and it's sad in a lot of reasons. And I do hate to see it, but there's actually nothing we can do in this situation.
No.
What we believe, and if we preach anything at all, it would be to first of all be a free thinker.
Yes.
Not to accept anything. Do your own research.
Belief is for children. If you believe in anything, it will preclude its another possibility from not being true when it could be. So we need to always keep an open mind. And I don't think the goal is necessarily to know everything. We should gather as much knowledge as we can.
Oh gosh.
But ultimately, by being in the flesh, I think that the truth is kind of always evading us. It's I think our goal here is to learn, and is to enjoy the mystery, to be with the mystery, to live with the mystery, to let it fascinate us, and to liberate ourselves from this flesh ultimately. But to know everything is not the goal.
I want to put this point across that there is absolutely no correct way to word these things.
Right. And we're using English, which is such a...
Yeah, this is a really...
We're very limited in how we can talk about this.
And like I mentioned on another video, maybe multiple, there's so many revelations that me and him will have. on these plants that we just don't know how to word.
It's feelings,
This motherfucker's had such crazy on
blowout
psilocybin
experiences.
and even with DXM, which is something he's not experimented enough. Not enough, but not as much.
Oh, I've experimented with it enough.
He has for sure, but what I was saying, not as much as psilocybin.
Right,
I feel
right.
But for sure enough. That was one of the first things he got into.
Guys, don't drink cough syrup.
Yeah, he
it has
preached
toxic
this.
stuff in it. Don't do that.
And most people that I've talked to, besides you, that was their way of taking this.
Yeah, there are pure versions of it that you can get. So,
but yeah, getting back to what I was talking about, there's no really category of things to put these things in, and there's no on some cases you really can't think of the words.
Right.
It's like, whoa.
How do you explain some of these, dude? The visions you have on psilocybin, dude. I've heard McKenna talk about this, dude. And I'm so glad that he talked about it because I experienced this myself. I've probably talked to you about it. Like he said one time he went to this other country and he was out of cannabis and they went on a dead run trying to find some and they finally scored some hash and hashish. And he said they smoked a bunch of it, and they ate a bunch of it too. He said he was so stone nailed to the floor. He said that he was, he was enjoying this music that was playing. He said it was like a whole,
different,
like a big, he said he thought it was some kind of new rock band that he'd never heard of or something. He was enjoying it. He said it had lyrics and everything. And he said he thought somebody was playing something. He said nobody was playing anything. It was just coming from this. But on psilocybin, I've closed my eyes and perceived this alien music that I could control myself, and every note would create this beautiful geometric pattern in this infinite space inside my mind.
I can kind of grasp onto what you're talking about. On my last decently large cannabis experience. Yeah, man, it was weird because the washer and dryer was on and there was some noises going on, and I remember I told you about this, but my wife telling me that I was asking that pretty much like what solo is that? I was like, what band is that? It sounds really good. You're in you're just literally, and Kava does this, man. Enough of it. You fucking leave whatever this is, and man, I can't stress enough how important that is to leave this place. Now not in the same way as
pill popper.
A pill popper, completely different. I want to stress that.
You don't want to shut off feelings. You want to expand your feelings.
Cannabis is big for that.
Yeah.
Kava is big for that.
Totally.
And as I mentioned, we've mentioned in a lot of other videos that Kratom's kind of more of this inspiration when you delve deeply into a lot of these important topics.
Kratom is great for studying, and it's great for music. It's great for inspiration and delving into the great work. It's great for ritual.
Yeah, there's we was talking about these so many misconceptions, and we would love to do everything possible to shine at least a little bit of light that we've learned, and we consider ourselves in the very early stages of
our development as spiritual beings.
We definitely know that for instance, our third eye, if you will, is open.
Maybe as open as it
can be at the moment, for sure. We definitely know this is an illusion.
Who knows if we abandon the culture completely, which we kind of have, but we still have jobs and things like that. Who knows what we could accomplish if we just went off into the woods, and just forgot everything.
We've recently had this conversation, but I will be honest with you. We took a walk and we had a talk about this, and I think the most thing that I'm upset with at the moment, this varies considering different changes to the environment that's going on that we have no control over.
Yeah.
But I've always knew this, but the church has, it's one of the things the plants has really pointed out is the damage that is done. And sometimes I get so overwhelmed. Actually, I couldn't get a good breath of air in on a recent Kava experience. I was like just a teensy weensy bit panic attack.
Which is weird from a. I would say that from a plant that's supposed to be an anti-anxiety aid. I do find that the specific kava that we're doing at the moment, it's a little more on the heady side, and it's like I've even had
kind of feeling in a way.
I've had some anxiety on it, which is so weird because
we usually don't.
It's supposed to be like
it's supposed to be for that.
It's supposed to be for treatment for anxiety, yeah.
But I would love for all of us to really look at a lot of these things that's going on. I just, earlier we was listening to Anton LaVey, somebody I recommend anybody looking into. A lot of great interviews from the late 60s, 70s, early 80s, and he kind of became a recluse until his death. And, I don't blame him at all. He'd done his part. He'd done his work.
He got ridiculed enough on talk shows.
But what I thought was, you look at this guy, and so many. Look at the stuff that he practices, except he doesn't have to hide it. Mm-hmm. And look, we know personally a lot of people who go to church, a lot of people who are preachers.
Try to maintain this image.
But, for instance, they are...
But inside they want to suck on a fucking stripper's feet while beating off.
They're some of the most lustful people you will.
Well, like LaVey said, the more you deny something, the more intense the desire becomes.
Yeah, man. A quote that he says that I love it. We should all look to this quote, and if you want to talk about being naughty, go out and be the naughtiest person on the block.
Right.
Obviously, within
the bounds of everyone's will.
That.
Crowley talks about this.
Oh, really?
I haven't read it too yet. He said something to the effect of the criminal person. He said the criminal person who will murder someone. He said, he's following like his false will, not his true will. Because if he was following his true will, he would not want to impede on someone else's true will. That's a big aspect of this.
Nobody would ever think that Crowley would write something like that. That's what pisses me off and gets me so riled up. Yep. All these people, and I don't want to get started on this because we could talk all day about it, but that one preacher, I don't remember his name, but the strange request that he asked his prostitute and their daughter.
Oh, you're talking about...
that's the sickest guy of all time.
Jimmy Swaggart.
But I recently found out, I didn't know this part to it, but he's still a big audience.
I know.
People was like, well, he repented, he's forgiven. Yeah. You just want to erase all this weird ass.
Yeah, he was like asking, not only going out with a prostitute, but he was according to the prostitute herself, who seemed like she was interviewed and she was a very level-headed, nice person.
Very.
Which most people would see her as the scum of the earth. She said that he was asking for her daughter, her little daughter, which is so sick.
First of all, he asked for her daughter, and then when she declined on that, he asked if they would do things together. He wanted them to have sex together.
What the fuck?
You can look into that. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's in the interview of the prostitute.
And this kind of stuff, it lays heavy on me.
Me too.
As a guy in a Twilight Zone always says we used to watch, it does lay heavy on me. It's so
sick and twisted.
Everything is so wrong, and man, this is kind of why I said I had a little bit of a panic attack the other day on this, because I felt trapped in a world where there's nothing but confusion, but there shouldn't be this much confusion.
Right.
What we think is right and wrong is completely false.
This comes down to what Nietzsche was talking about, and other people too. He has this part in one of his books, like, we have to reevaluate everything that we supposedly value. What is really valuable, and I think we need to have a big assessment about that.
We have enough worries without you know, all these so-called leaders adding more stress. Like I've mentioned, I've been very, very scared the past few nights. I've been in like a little bit of a paranoid state. Every helicopter or plane that I hear, I think that this is the end. You know, that this is a bomb, and you know, this it's sad that we even have to think this way. But with the circumstances that's going on right now, you know, thinking of death is, you know, scary enough.
Right.
Like thinking of, you know, untimely death is a completely different story. But just thinking I'm going to live to be 85 years old and die in my sleep, that's enough to think about. That's enough to. I've gotten better at this, man. You know, I've went through phases when this first started to hit me a couple years ago, to where I thought, oh gosh, when this first dawned on me that this is how ridiculous of a person that I was. Up until a few years ago, you know, mid 20s, you know, you would think that I would have had a revelation of, oh, I'm going to die one day. But no, it just hit me. Oh, well, wow, I'm not going to live forever.
Right.
And then when that hit me, I thought there's no point in anything. Everything is doom. And like, why is it that this has to happen? You know, because I'm attached to not many people, but the few people that I'm close to. I can't stand the thoughts of that happening. But there's often other times, and recently, I've been more, you know, accepting it a lot more than ever before. Not only that, but not in a suicidal way, obviously, but, you know, looking forward to it in a way, just because I know, you know, I'll be free and I don't have to, you know, this worry of these stupid wars and just everything that's going on, you know, that's very temporary, and I don't want to go out in that way, though.
Right. You know, but if you consider the idea of reincarnation and karma,
I've thought of that a lot recently.
You know, then the only thing that's really going to set us free in that view would be, you know, we're going to have to resolve, you know, all the karma that we have to deal with over lifetime. So honestly, perhaps the attitude we should have is just be here right now, no matter what's happening, because we're going to be here right now.
You can't preach that enough, man.
Right.
That's the truth.
And work on yourself moment by moment, because we might be just coming right back here after we die.
You know what, man? I've thought, you know, this conversation we're having right now is actually giving me this kind of, you know, what was I going to say?
The willies?
The willies. I'm having a little bit of the willies right now thinking about death. I mean, I could fucking just, you could, you know, just fucking fall out of a chair and be dead.
Yeah.
You know, just take something like a fast heart rate. You know, just bad dream, you wake up and your heart's beating really fast. That will show you, man, I could just fucking explode.
You know, there's the guy that, you know, he has high cholesterol and he has high blood pressure and high heart rate, you know, but then he's, you know, every day he's going to the fast food restaurant and trying to escape reality that way, while simultaneously damaging his body more and more, trying to escape the idea of death, you know, through all these ways, while simultaneously destroying himself and making death closer.
Yeah, man, that's so true. We know a lot of people that has went down that road. You know, I can't stress enough.
Or alcohol or whatever.
You know, man, especially the way I'm feeling right now, brother.
Yes, sir.
You know, oh God, we've talked for 24 minutes. I thought it was for 10 minutes.
That's insane. It's insane.
I just happened to glance at that. It's so weird. But, you know, I would, you know, kind of going back to how far along that, you know, like me and you are on this
path,
mystical path, if you will. I definitely know for a fact it would be nothing or very little compared to this if it wasn't for these plants.
Right.
And that makes me, you know, man, it's you know, Crawley talks about this being the I love the term, the high gods. You know, getting up to that level with these. and there's these choices and these trips that we can
It's sucked
get
into.
sucked into and fouled up on. You know, it's all about life is all about choosing.
Yeah.
What are we going to choose to for our consciousness and mindset to be in? As he mentioned, a plantless life besides the lettuce that's on your Dave's triple from Wendy's. And that being the only
Your only plant's consciousness.
yeah, I mean this is, and now that I see this, and I wouldn't have thought about it this many years ago, it's appalling.
Yeah, it is.
In many different ways. But that was funny, by the way, wasn't it, man? I thought that was a good joke.
Yeah.
Kind of a joke, but it's true.
Our world is dying. It's a known fact. For anybody that has eyes to see, our oceans are becoming slowly more polluted. Our air is becoming slowly more toxified. The rainforest is being devoured and raped by corporations. The indigenous people that have knowledge that we need as people that's out of touch with that consciousness, they're being displaced and encouraged to go into our way of culture. This toxic mall culture, capitalism. How are we going to spend our time in the face of that? Are we going to simply indulge in hedonism and orgies from hell, until all hell freezes over? How good is that going to do us? I think we all need to put our heads together and start thinking about solutions. There was a guy, I don't remember his name, but he said he wasn't a drug guy, but he said something to the effect of murder is so hardwired in the monkey that it's going to take pharmacological intervention to drive this out of us. And like people like McKenna, I tend to agree with him. These plants is probably the only thing that can transform the masses' consciousness enough to get us back on track. Stoned and exalted. Living in the forest.
As controversial as this is to a lot of people, and this is usually referred to with cannabis, but getting stoned on kava, that term is so misleading. I mean, granted, after many shells, you can get to that, I guess, term for sure, but it's not the same, obviously, as alcohol.
No.
That's it really is just so inferior to go about this. And just the way, well, first of all, before I go into that, this is kava, just for example, such an enlightening, liberating experience. And he has no right to be on here because he's not even on kava. He's not on kratom. He thinks catnip is
the way,
the truth, and the life. Amen.
People say that catnip affects cats like in a similar way that marijuana and LSD affects us.
Yeah, it's strange. Wow, that's shocking.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It's like a cat's drug.
Hey now,
you're trying to mess up everything. God damn it! No, I'm joking. But yeah, going back to the truth being very complex. A lot of people wouldn't understand, why this substance would be good or this one to be bad, or, let's just use another physical sense. Somebody who just destroys their body with fast food and alcohol all day and just gobbling down refrigerator wieners from Cavalier from daylight to dark, one wiener after the next. Well, that sounds wrong. Maybe I'm going to start cracking jokes to get people to view this, maybe. And then we subtly but goodly implement
our memes,
our magical situations, shall we speak, that we've learned from Crawley. I don't know why I had to put it that way. But the truth is, I have to put it some way. But
Yep.
no, look, you have somebody who destroys themselves with fast food, alcohol, and just taking in as what culture gives you as truth.
Yeah.
And then you could have somebody that's just say extremely like healthy, goes to the gym, like stays at the gym.
Yeah.
There's such an extreme, both way you can go. That's just an example with any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people. I think it was Adam on Sonic Substance talking about this. One thing that he experienced with, well, I think he's mostly acid, but he used to be like a really big like workout guy, but he recently got back into it again. But when he was having these revelations, on these psychedelics, he didn't really feel the need to be so obsessed with, lifting weights and stuff like that because he realized how temporary this place is. And it really is. And I don't know, man. I just feel like that's kind of because one day I might talk about this being so temporary and it don't really matter too much. But on the other hand, I feel like I've gotten a lot healthier, and I
Right.
take more like pride to be healthier now. And I feel like these plants has helped me with that.
Totally. Me too.
And yeah, I don't spend like 8 hours in the gym or anything like that.
Right.
For instance, I used to not be able to do like, 3-4 push-ups. Now I can do maybe 20 on a good day. So,
Yeah.
That's
And I mean, our body is our conduit to consciousness. Consciousness, I think, it's non-local, and it kind of nestles into a me body that has a nervous system, and can process it. But I think consciousness could be like this singular thing, that's kind of into all of us. But yeah, so if you're trashing your body, you're going to be much less likely to to have a good functioning brain, and if you're sick all the time, it can restrict you on the great work. So it's important to take care of your body. I mean, people in the East, and Crawley knew about that in terms of like yoga. And yoga is really interesting. I haven't really done yoga, really. I mean, I meditate sometimes, stretching and things like that. It's like simple exercises and breathing exercises, and all those things are useful. I actually had some pretty profound experiences on
Kappa
Kava with breathing exercises. Yoga is interesting because it's like the idea that you can configure your body in a certain way, or it's kind of like an incantation. You can say something a certain way, and it will have an effect. Yoga is like you can configure your body in a certain way, and it will release certain energy. And people feel so amazing after a yoga session. A lot of people report that. And with breathing exercises, there's people that do holotropic breathing that say they have full out DMT experiences.
Always talk about this earlier. It's interesting.
And we do have DMT in our bodies, so it would make sense. I've never had a DMT experience, but I have had profound experiences through breathing, for sure. I think breath control is very important, man. I really think so. I think a lot of people breathe improperly, and it affects your mind and your mood profoundly.
Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm really not. I feel like I'm not breathing the way I should. Man, I had a weird actually last night when I just slept a few hours, but man, I had like an audio hallucination, and I was certain. I actually, woke up, my wife and told her. I can't remember what it was, but I heard something so loud and it was repetitive. And that could be many things, but I started thinking, is that possibly sometimes I get into a position and I realize I'm not breathing the best. That's very scary.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it could be like some kind of sleep problem, you know.
I mean, sleep is actually scary. It really is. I mean, it's, people has proposed that possibly it's not going to be as much of a thing, like maybe another million years. A lot of people, there was a scientist, but he was also a philosopher, that he had the idea that this is just something like a lot of other animals do. We just lay down and be quiet at night time, and that
Right.
we'll just go ahead and just
rest.
to keep other animals from killing us. We don't have vision the way a lot of other animals do, like bobcats or
Right.
anything else. And those kind of animals would, prey on us.
Right.
So that's an interesting
very, like,
possibility.
Sleeping is a very vulnerable position to be in.
Oh, for sure.
Think about like in ancient times, you know, you were in the jungle or something, you just lay down and go to sleep and hope a fucking cat don't get you, man.
Yeah, man. Our body is so unique, and it's so miraculous.
Yes, it is.
That it is able to
do the things it does.
Do the things it does. It's function. It's beautiful. I had this revelation, man, on comment, and I want to put this point across. It's such bullshit. Fuck Hollywood. Fuck these malls. The stuff they advertise and want you to buy, because if you buy these things, then this makes you pretty. I had a Kava experience that was so beautiful. I realized there is no such thing as a ugly person.
Right.
Hollywood and these people in any modern entertainment, which it's not the type of entertainment really like to wipe our butts with. It's so garbage. There's no mystery in anything anymore. In this,
and a lot of stuff coming out now, like it has some kind of agenda and propaganda to it.
Like we'll use this for an example. We're really into, like 80s splatter films and 60s and 70s Hammer films. It's so amazing to watch a fucking movie without them trying to shove, Black Lives Matter down your throat, or, all these different liberations, because we've talked about this before, and I think it's really important. Yes, there's been a lot of horrible things that's happened, sexism, is that what's called, sexist, whatever it's called, racial judgment, what do you call the people who hate gay people?
Homophobic people.
Yeah. Look, all of these things are very horrible, and it's a result of low consciousness. But on the other hand, we do need to realize this is very temporary, and the tables has turned around. And there's always a new
there's villain.
It is. All of this stuff needs to stop. This is just one small example of a big problem that's happening right now. I've talked about before women who automatically hate the white men, and granted, they could possibly have a reason for that, for a lot of cocksuckers who's still around.
But you should make your assessment on an individual by individual basis, not just stereotype everyone.
Yeah, we don't understand.
That's the same thing that we're trying to get away from,
We don't understand anything about, racism, people that hate somebody just because they're gay or any other reason. It's hogwash that this is even a conversation. But we need to live our lives without what the hell was like the other day, celebration of some type of, none of this stuff even needs to exist. We need to raise awareness for things that are actually important. We're, aging and dying, talking about these strange topics. That's just a trip.
Yes, it is.
We're getting ourselves all hung up on just so many different things. I mean, let's figure out what the fuck this is,
Yeah. We're all in the same situation.
It doesn't, matter about the variations of skin colors, and as I mentioned, that this is big. That this is what makes it difficult to enjoy, like modern entertainment. Back in the day, you didn't have that concern. You didn't have to worry about this type of, what do you call it? Propaganda. It's there's just a lot of bad things that's really going, and there's always been something that's, I guess, bad things going on since the beginning. But it just seems like we've advanced in certain ways, such as technology, but we've also...
Our consciousness has not. At least the people that are holding the nuclear bombs.
It just seems like, if anything, it's probably regressed.
Yeah. That's the thing, like the evil people of the past, they didn't have nukes.
That's the thing, man.
So we're facing a crisis. They talk about the nuclear, what they call it, the nuclear clock, or the doomsday clock, which is like, it started when we bombed Hiroshima. So then it became possible to obliterate an entire fucking portion of a country, through these powerful bombs. And since that day, it's just a matter of time, basically. Unless we all at the same time say, yeah, let's just get rid of these nukes. We don't need to use this. Disarm all of them. Let's try to unify and realize that, we can all help each other out. We can all be a community of friends,
None of this stuff needs to be happening. And what it does? It goes back to having bad health or doing stuff to cause you to have bad health. You're causing situations to happen to make it very, very hard to, try to get back and try to tap into that divine. All of these things together, man, it could be why nobody's really looking into it.
Yeah, our consciousness, the majority of people's consciousness is so surface level.
Yeah.
And I think that's people in shamanic communities, they're more in tune with that deeper level of reality that we are not. And perhaps we're going to need some technology to deflect asteroids from killing us, or to prevent disease. And so we need the scientists in a sense, but we also need the shaman too.
Shamans
so
and
hopefully that can kind of converge and reshape our consciousness, from being this reductionist way of thinking about things.
Yeah, me and him are, we'll call it, proud mystics. Really, really are, though. Actually, the person who's very skeptical tends to, at times, really get under my skin for believing this to be the reality. Here you go, my good man.
Thank you, sir.
For everything worldly is all that we have to live for. And this really should really make us step back and to look at why is it that, we was talking about Crowley earlier, why is it that when you bring up the name of Crowley, why is it so criticized? Anton LaVey, as we mentioned earlier, he went through hell. I mean, that's why he decided to kind of step out of the spotlight and end up giving these positions of the church to somebody else. A lot of people look at it as doing whatever you want. It's actually based on true will. A lot of stuff that LaVey would talk about, a lot of it, I don't think he agreed with everything, but there's definitely a lot that he agreed with Crowley on. Everybody, it seems, that the greats have had their own purpose, things that we can look back on and really study on. Crowley was magic and little bit of psychedelics, actually a little bit of everything. You know, LaVey was to establish a way to treat people, a way to possibly get some people to examine their Christianity belief system. You had people like Terence McKenna, who he was here for psilocybin mushrooms, spreading awareness for that. You know, Ram Dass was similar as far as the psychedelics goes, but he experimented with more, I feel, a lot of other ways to get to spiritualism, meditation, and he actually, you know, it's crazy the stories that he has to tell with, is it Maharaji? How you say that name?
Maharaji.
Maharaji, which we could definitely talk a lot about that. But what I'm trying to say is all these greats, they had a it goes back to what Crowley talked about, a orbit.
Mm-hmm.
They
Their
followed
own
their
path.
and the reason there's not many of those people
It's because
is
people
because
are not
people
following
are
their
not
own
following
path.
their
People
own path.
are
Yeah.
falling into the grooves of you know, the routines of mundane life. You know, we got to resist that as
Yeah.
much as we fucking can.
Yeah.
And that cannot be stressed enough. You know, the idea of a true will is fascinating to me. You know, and I really do tend to think that every man and every woman is a star, and we all have our own paths, and like deep down within ourselves, underneath all of these layers of conditioning, there's like a north star there that you can touch in deep states of consciousness, and if you can orient yourself towards it, you can, you know, like Crawley said, the universe itself starts to back you up.
Earlier.
Yeah,
I love
the
that.
universe itself will back you up, you know, if you're courageous enough to reject the main grain and follow your own north star, which is connected to the great one.
Another thing that I love so freaking much that he says in that book that we're still in the introduction about, you know, he talks about the huge misconception, I would imagine, especially for back in his time, you know, being born in 1875. You know, he talks a lot about the way he words things. Man, it's so unique compared to his other books. You know, it's just the way he breaks things down. He makes it very, you know, especially for his writings, is very intelligent. You know,
Yes,
man, and I love how he clears up misconception that this, you know, magic. Oh my gosh! I mean, still to this day, especially in our area, he talks about magic. The people who practice magic are not these crazy like nobodies,
Fringe
you know.
people, but this is for the intelligent, you know.
Yeah, and he started naming all these different occupations. Everybody said this is for anybody.
This is one of the big points he tried to get across in the magic and theory and practice. Is he said this multiple times in bold lettering.
Yeah,
magic is for all.
Yeah,
magic is for all. This is how you can use the underlying forces of nature to compel your will into existence.
Yeah.
Not only in this world, but in your next world. You know, true liberation.
I love that so much. And if you read some of, we haven't got too deeply into this. We're probably going to look more into it actually later today. But in some of Crawley's other writings, 1917 is his book I read mostly, like a good portion of it. I didn't read it all the way through, but I pretty much did because I kind of bounced back and forth. You know, I read the table of contents and just, oh, that sounds like an interesting chapter. Just moved to that. Right. But it's basically a, you know, kind of a overview and some of the main important parts in his life, the different experience that he had. He talks about, cocaine and whatever cocaine is displayed as now is completely different than back in that day. Obviously, you know how he was having, you know, actual pure,
Or
you know, with the hair on.
unadulterated.
You know, now things is obviously mixed up. You don't know what the hell you're getting.
Yeah. You know,
For the most
plants
part.
plants are the safest way, like plants in their plant
Yeah.
form, because you know, for one, you can identify them. You know what
Mhm.
they smell like, what it looks like. If it's just a white powder, God only knows. Only God knows what that is.
Oh yeah, but I love how he has no particular like. He describes things very different than a lot of anybody else I've really read about, and the way he presents magic is, man, it just got me thinking about that. That's the way, you know, we see it. We see it as this, you know, just take the regulation book or whatever that a lot of people try to sell and just rip that up, and magic is what you want to make out of it.
That's the world is made of magic.
Yeah, everything is.
And
This
magic.
conversation we're having right now is very magical that we're
Truly.
able to do this.
Yep. And damn it, what was I gonna say? Magic is like a way to catalyze your freeing yourself.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
Magic is a way to catalyze liberation.
You wouldn't by any chance, brother, have, if you don't know, big deal,
Yes, sir.
that cough element, would you?
Coffee?
Yeah. If you wanted to, by any chance, make
I
a
thought I
little,
had another one.
shell
Yeah, I
for
got
me.
you, brother.
Awesome. Let me go get some water real quick, my
Okay.
good man. Yeah, I started thinking, I believe I might do another shell on this ceremony.
Don't blame you,
You gonna do
sir.
one right now? Or probably
I'm
but-
probably good at the moment.
He done a few extra shells than me, actually. But yeah, I feel this, I guess you can call it, realm that we're in. You know, this called synthesis with the combination of kratom and kava is. I feel that this is what Crowley talks about, and a lot of Diary of a Drug Fiend. This, you know, euphoria that will take place. You know, that makes you really go deep with these different mysteries. You know, getting to magic. You reach to places that we believe it's completely impossible to get to.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's apparent. And, you know, the guy that I was reading about the other day, that the way he worded it was so good, about the energy, like, you know, bringing in the good energy, you know, and, you know, getting out the bad energy. Yeah, the book with the aura, I think, I don't remember what. Thank you so much, by the way.
You're welcome, sir.
That was so beautiful, you know, the way he worded a lot of things. He took a lot of inspiration from Crowley too. You know, he taught his first opening introduction was to say that Crowley brought so much to, you know, everything that we have now. A lot of, just say, Wiccanism, and you know, Wiccanism is very, very newish. You know,
Yeah, it was started
40s or something like that.
in the early 1900s.
And the gentleman who came up with that, by the way, is a
Is
very
it
cool
Gardner
guy.
or something? I forget his name.
Very.
Gardner was one of the big ones. I don't know if that was the main one,
But he said to say that Crowley, you know, changed the outlook on magic would be a great understatement.
he brought it to the West.
He brought it, and you know,
Isn't that crazy? He lived in the U.S. for a while, didn't
he did.
he? Isn't that crazy?
He lived in the U.S.
Where did he live in the U.S.?
Louisiana.
Really?
Look that up, my good man. I thought that was amazing. He lived a couple other places. I'd like to look into that more later. But he did say that here in the U.S. he liked Louisiana the best.
Yeah.
Louisiana the best. He lived in France. Yeah.
He got kicked out.
He got kicked out.
Went back to England.
I think he got kicked out there as well. I don't know where this particular place was. He lived, literally, he was a cave dweller for a long time. And this is when, more of the early days, you know, when he was...
finding his way.
Oh, yeah. He spent a lot of time in the woods, which that's where it's at. That's where the magic is.
I've said it before. If you want to, the nearest way we can contact, divinity, is our own bodies, and nature itself. That's the 3D manifestation of the goddess. And I think we should spend as much time as possible living in nature. You just feel better when you do. You feel better. I mean,
even spend a certain time of your day outside.
Oh my god!
It just adds so much.
For sure, getting sunlight. I mean, obviously vitamin D is released when you're in sunlight, and that helps you feel happier. And we need to be outside. We really do. These cities and people will really resist when I say that, like, about cities. I said cities. It reminded me of the word cities in India, which means spiritual powers. But cities, as the metropolises, they're undeniably toxic. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you enjoy cities, I totally understand that. It's cool. It's appealing to our senses. I get it. But I love McKenna's idea about this. We need to take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
Oh, that's the fucking truth.
But we need to push these toxic environments into cyberspace, and if we wanted to visit, it would be cool to me to see the Earth, redone, rehabilitated,
me too.
cleaned up, and it's just, and maybe in 100 years it can just be a beautiful garden again.
Is that possible?
I don't know. I would love it so much.
But with the concrete and everything,
rid of all of that, take it up.
Right?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I hope we can try.
Yeah.
Just disassemble all this toxicity that we've made out of everything. Return to a garden planet.
Do you think that'll happen one day?
We have the science. I don't know. I hope. We have the science to be able to, minimize the negative effects of all this pollution and stuff. And then you have, communities of people living together. From the outside, it would look like we're living like back in before Christ, but on the inside of these houses, you have people hooked up to VR sets, virtual reality sets, and they're exploring realms unimaginable, cities and castles in the sky, and anything you want to explore. In virtual reality. Because a lot of these things we just can't do physically, 3D. With
and things that has been done has turned out very disastrous.
Exactly.
I think I've been on this little case recently to where I get really, I pull a downer, man, whenever I start thinking about this. But yeah, I might just be, sitting somewhere in a park.
I lied. I'm going to do it one more show.
I lied. I don't know. Might as well, let's get out there, brother, and let the plants talk. But I get very frustrated, and it feels hopeless. And look, the selfish part of me wants to say, if that ever happened to where in the future, hundreds of years from now, they somehow pull up the concrete and tear down these, corporations that's been, everything's set back to just say 150 years ago. I would almost be jealous that I couldn't have been born later
to see that,
because I've been thinking a lot recently. I walk outside and there's somewhere that, if we're in more of a concrete place, if I go to one of those places and see that, it hurts me.
Yeah.
I like to often look at I don't even like saying the word really, but I can't say it, to be honest with you, not on these videos. It's just like, this is our time to be create a sacred space.
Right.
And I just want to destroy and say, fuck all these stupid, greedy, money-hungry, fake alchemy signs.
Yeah.
The
signs, the sigils of the corporation.
But I was going to bring up supermarket that everybody's so crazy about. The convenience. We'll just say that it starts.
Wally World.
We'll call it Wally World. That sounds great. Honestly, it's getting to the point where I don't even like to address these names because it makes me, and I get really weird about it.
Who knows how these capitalistic wizards are charging these symbols, dude? We have no idea how deep the manipulation is. Like, it could be where there's literally groups of people at Bohemian Grove, fucking like elites, and they're literally charging these symbols with their energy. Anyone who looks at this will be impelled to want to buy. You know, who knows? You know, that's a kind of woo woo, but
no,
it's totally possible.
Nothing is. We've learned this. Nothing is woo woo, really. At least to us. A lot of these experiences with the plants has, showed us that there's no such thing as really something being impossible. But I do want to say if this is the case, and just say they're actually doing that, they're in a very, upon them is a very rude awakening. And, what that is living for is completely false. It's sad. It's I go probably a little bit overboard about it. I try to go to there's like actually certain gas stations that I just don't want to go to. I'd always prefer to go to like the little family-owned business than go to these really big. I'm very funny about that. There's a certain place, man, like a gas station. I can't tell you how much I despise it.
Which one's that?
SH. I don't want to say because I hate that gas station so much.
This is a mainstream.
That's the only reason we've talked about this before. And we sit back and we've done this before, and it seems like nobody else that we've met has done this. But I'm hoping somebody else besides us sit back and look at how beautiful this flat was before it was corrupted by concrete and this corporation that's just waiting. I didn't even know you had one of those, dude.
I didn't either.
I can't wait to take a sip of that, actually. Those come in handy with kava. They were perfect with kava. But that kills me, man. It really does. It bothers me.
I know, man.
And I would love to see it, whether we're not here or not. We don't reincarnate for another. If we do reincarnate, I mean, I don't think it'd be kind of arrogant to say I've done enough to say that. I mean, but we're very. If everything goes correctly, I mean, we could be very early on in the day. We could accomplish a lot more.
We talk about this a lot too. The fact that we're interested in what we are, and if you find yourself interested in this process of, when you start seeing that the culture and the way it is and the way things are ran, when you start to awaken to why are we doing it like this? Because there's a lot of people walking around that just totally take it for granted. This is just the way it is. Somebody out there knows the reason why. There's somebody out there wiser than me. Motherfucker, there's not. There's not.
Mm-hmm.
This is like John Lennon said. This world is being ran by insane people, and but once you start to awaken to that, there's no turning back. I don't think, man.
Let's just take one guy for example, and fuck this guy, by the way. Like he recently just said, by the way, it's Musk.
Yeah.
It's just so. Oh man, he recently had a comment that he thinks that Social Security should not be a thing.
Easy for his billionaire ass to say.
That's the most despicable thing that I've ever heard. It's funny that comes from the richest man in the world.
Literally, that's insane.
I couldn't believe what I heard. I just thought anybody who would support this guy or actually like this guy, or buy this guy's car.
Yeah, man. And the thing is about his car too. Like, I was listening to. Hopefully we don't lose all of our 5 subscribers with this statement. I was listening to Alex Jones the other day, talking about how when she's to my knowledge, he's pretty right about this. How like electric cars are instead of yeah, the pollution is not coming out of the tailpipe, but it's coming out of the factories that are making these batteries.
Oh,
and
that's 100% true.
yeah, not only that, but there's literally Tesla batteries just floating around the ocean. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly, that's 100% true.
it's it's not there's people out there that I've seen videos of people claiming to run vehicles on like water, I'm pretty sure. And I think I think another person,
not just a little experiment.
yeah, and another person I think
That's crazy.
ran it on plastic or something like that.
That water would be amazing.
Oh my god. I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, if you look at the evolution of cannabis, there's many reasons why cannabis was this propaganda against it was launched. Number one, there was this thing called the decorticator or something like that, and it was this way to turn hemp into this like biodegradable plastic. Okay. And not only that, but paper. It could be used as paper. Our Constitution was written on hemp paper. It's very strong. Hemp is an amazing plant, not only for its psychedelic and psychoactive effects and medicinal effects, but it's like a
It could be a rope.
yeah, again.
It can be a damn rope to get your bulls riding and you rip the thing around there and what's happening? What the heck did I do that for? But no, it can be used for many different ways.
Exactly, but the plastic thing, this guy who was like making money from trees, like paper, he was making money from like this type of plastic. He was one of the main people that launched this anti-cannabis propaganda. There's all kinds of ways that are these corporations suppress things like that. I'm sure that there's better ways to fuel stuff. And it's just being suppressed by corporate greedy fucks who do not have a sense of when they die what they're going to lift their eyes to. And I'm not saying they're going to go to hell like the Christian hell, but I think karma is real, and I don't think these people are going to get by with a damn thing. They might live like a big fat rat, here on Earth for a little while, but they might be spending a little time in the hell realms,
Oh yeah,
when they depart this planet.
Can I tell a little funny joke real quick? Not a joke, it's just something that happened in my life a great many of years ago. So this was funny. So I had gotten laid off from the job that I had, so I decided just to find the quickest fast food job that I possibly could after that, because I figured I would get hired on very quickly. And so I went down to I won't say the name of it, but it was a wiener place. It was a hot dog place.
Dude, I think this is like strictly like a West Virginia thing anyway, though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but
so I went to a wiener place and I talked to a guy. He was cool, man, like just a cool guy. He reminded me of the husband on a great movie, by the way. Liv Tyler plays in this, which is she's a really pretty wifey. But Liv Tyler, The Strangers, in the mid-2000s.
Was she in that?
Yeah. We didn't
The
watch
first
that.
one?
The first one.
We watched that together. I liked that
again
movie.
soon. That's
Oh
pretty
shit,
good.
that was a great movie actually. It's pretty scary, dude.
Oh, it was.
Because that's like a pretty real situation you could find yourself in.
Yeah, but that guy on there, for some reason, he just looked just like this guy.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, I worked there for like a week and just hated it. But
Classic.
he asked me to, when I go cash my check, to bring him back $6 for my t-shirt, for my employee shirt. I said, okay, man, I already planned on doing that anyway. And he grabbed me by the arm. He said, seriously, man. He said, karma, man, karma.
What?
I was like, yeah, okay, I'll bring the $6 back. But yeah, I don't know why. That just came to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you gonna...
Yeah, I'm addicted to this stuff, man.
This, by the way, he's got some very actual...
It's like a natural incense made with natural ingredients. I bought it online. The brand is and I'm not obviously fucking advertised by these people or sponsored. I don't have. If you look at my views, I don't have a fucking sponsor, but I do like to throw up, because a lot of incense that say they're natural or not quite natural.
Yeah.
God damn it. But yeah, this is Tibetan incense, like traditional Tibetan incense. And probably gonna light one here. Oh yeah, I'd use this one one day. Look at this shit. Nag Champa Gold.
That is weird. Look, how's it
Yes,
smell?
sir. It smells amazing. Well, dude, I had some like non-authentic Nag Champa. Or I might be pronouncing that wrong.
Nabs, like the crackers? We're too out there in Colorado.
Check that out.
Yummy. Is that the one you're going to do?
I think so, man.
Sounds great to me. To simply state the truth of this phenomenon, this will make you feel like Buddha himself. What a great thing to put in your temple as a purification. Really,
Duncan Trussell, he talks about this experience he had. I want to get to something else too, but
absolutely.
I was trying not to get ahead of myself here. He had talked about this experience he had because he was talking to Rogan. This is like a 2011 podcast, and he was talking to him about the Hare Krishna chant, and he said Rogan was like, what the fuck, what could that possibly do to you just saying those words, And he was kind of explaining that to him, and then he started to explain this experience that he had in India, and he was by the power of earth, air, and fire, we bless and consecrate our space in the name of the goddess and the god, so mote it be. And he had this experience at this ashram, and it was like a special day. I think it was called the appearance of Krishna Day or something like that. And they were having this ritual, okay? And he said he got real stoned. And he went to this ritual. And he said they had, images of the deities, and they were pouring milk on them. And he had incense, beautiful smelling incense blowing. And he said that when he was in that experience, he said he felt like he was in the presence of something, like an actual intelligence. Something like he described it like an alien intelligence that he was contacting in this ritual, and they were quoting scriptures and doing chants and incense and pouring milk on the deities, and and he felt the presence of spirit in that experience. And but things like but there's also the thing about like Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. I love that guy. I want to get deeper into his lectures. I want to watch a little bit of him. He talks about spiritual materialism. Spiritual materialism. And to my knowledge, what that means is like people can get really attached to, things like incense or things like beads, Buddhist beads and like are in for it just for the aesthetic or to feel good about themselves, or that's ego, and ultimately that has to be let go. But I do think like when I've had like when I first got this incense, I got up one morning, I burned some, and I turned all the lights off, and I did a Hare Krishna chant, and I was like very moved. Like I felt that presence, of a spirit.
Oh God, I know. I can recount one as well. We had some incense lit, and it was the first time I had heard it. And it usually I'll have to listen to something a few times before I really get the feel to it.
Right.
But it was the first time I was moved. I was having such revelations and epiphanies. And that was the Lotus Sutra. Sutra, yeah. When I first heard that, when he showed me that, I felt such a presence. I really did.
Yeah. Oh
It
my
was-
god! Any time that I want to kind of tap into that state, that's a go-to.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It's my new thing.
Trussell, he had basically all that memorized. Remember I showed you that? I think I showed you that.
Ah, yeah, you did.
Isn't that
Oh, it was
crazy?
crazy. I would love
Because
to
it
learn
sounds
that. It's
so like alien to like the way we talk, but
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
there's
man.
this idea. There's this idea. You know, when you go to India, and you might find a legit person, you know, that's pretty high consciousness. They talk about how it doesn't matter if you don't understand the words. It's they call it a transmission. You know.
Oh wow, I agree with that. You know,
Yeah.
it's like people who don't like metal that like
Well, I couldn't understand a word.
yeah. What kind of metal is that called again?
Death metal.
Death metal.
You know.
A lot of people.
Black metal.
Black metal, yeah. You know, a
Even
lot of
some
people
thrash metal, I suppose.
would, you know, veer away from that just because they can't understand, and that's just
Mm.
really, you know, you can look up the lyrics later on, but it's
Right.
provoking this certain feeling and emotion,
Precisely.
and you know, kind of weird because it's funny about that because LaVey talks about that, you know, with these different chants and stuff like that. A lot of people, it's really sometimes it's not really meaning anything. It's just kind of it's gibberish.
It's just simply to evoke a certain
Yeah.
feeling, you know.
I love that so much. I use that a lot, by the way.
You know, the language of Enochian. You know, it's
Yeah.
this magical language. It's almost
Mhm.
solely used for magical
Yeah.
purposes, and I haven't really messed around with it because it does seem pretty powerful, and
I've
haven't
read a
studied
decent
too
amount,
much.
but
Yeah, I've read about it, and John Dee and Kelly, Edward Kelly.
you're right about it being powerful. Though.
Yeah. And John Dee, I believe either him or Kelly was the Queen's like seer or mystic that
The mystic seer.
yeah, like she had like the Queen back in like 1500s or something. She had her own like magician that she kept around to, you know, tell so he could help her tell the future and give her insights. He was messing around with this crystal trapezoid, and I don't know if that was probably wasn't the first time scrying had been used, but he was doing scrying and he somehow opened up some gates, and he came into contact with beings that dictated to him these words. And I'd like to read Crawley's translation of it. LaVey's translation is amazing, but he kind of satanized them, you know, to make it kind of fitting to the satanic religion. You know, because to a Satanist, you know, Satan is God,
right.
you know, the true God. And
oh, that's
so
interesting.
it makes
I'd like
sense.
to look more into that.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Oh, dude,
scary almost.
the first time I read
it is scary.
the satanic translation of the Enochian keys, I was very moved, man. You know, it's like the earth is thine to have and to hold, you know, and it talks about all kinds of cool stuff, honestly.
Yeah, the only thing that I've looked into that about is what you've read. Very, very, revelations that even revisiting that, you know, after no matter how many times you've looked into it, revelations.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to think here, man, if there's anything I wanted to talk about else. Anyway. We may just sit here silently for about 10 to 12 more minutes and just kind of keep making eye contact with the camera. Yep, we know we are oddballs.
It's like that Psych Substance video or that swim video. He was like silent for so long.
I was just thinking of that, man. That was a cool video, by the way.
Fuck yeah, it was, dude. Dude, when you come down from a big psychedelic trip, man, it's so it's best to just sit alone with yourself or to write. Like, I remember trying to talk to my girlfriend after I came down from a
Didn't work
7
probably,
gram
yeah.
trip. You just sound like a raving maniac. because you're trying to describe all this stuff you're seeing. Because when you're coming down, you're like, you can still like pretty clearly recall what you've seen. You know, McKenna talked about those experiences being state bounded. You know, it's like a lot of people, the DMT flash or the psilocybin experiences, when you're in there, you know, it's just all right there. But when you come down from it and you no longer have that neurotransmitter in your brain, it's like you only bring back really, like, you bring back impressions of the ineffable, and you know you saw something so important. And you will bring back the things that kind of relate to the 3D world, but the other stuff, the ineffable stuff, it's kind of state bounded. It's bound to that state, you know.
Deep, very deep stuff, man.
Yeah.
You know, right after this video, we're going to be dropping 15 grams of mushrooms apiece.
I'm gonna be boofing them this time. We'll see how that goes.
You never know. He's actually thinking about considering this soon.
I definitely am.
And
I'm excited
what
and
happens.
terrified as I should be. You know, it does not get easier the more you do it. It gets harder, as a matter of fact. Like, McKenna said this in one of his videos. He said, he's talking about that. He said how it doesn't get easier, and he said, how do you say it? Oh, he said, you know, it's a matter of surrender. And surrender is like it's its own, like, it's unique every time. Like, it's like a new thing every time, you know, like surrender is not something that we're used to really doing that much.
Yeah.
So every time we have that experience, like, we might have a hard time surrendering.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I could see myself really having a hard time with that.
Dude, there's
aspect.
nothing more scary than when you feel the psilocybin hit your receptors and you go, oh shit, I thought I was ready. I am not ready. And you got 6 hours ahead of you.
That means you'll get put back into the place. I have to put my mouth that way when I
don't
say
know.
that. Put back onto my place. How am I doing that for? Yeah.
Ready to wrap this up, dude?
Yeah, I am ready, man. Whatever way you feel beneficial.
You can do a little Sri Ram if you'd like.
We ask you to attend the benefit.
Receive the transmission. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 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 Hare Krishna. Hail the goddess. Anything else?
Hail the Kratom wifeys.
Hail the 3D manifestation of the goddess that helps us connect to her.
Beautiful.
All right?
We call upon you to call upon the source, the divine, in whatever
Represent,
way that will
be an aperture for spirit in this world of corruption and toxicity. We will see you again.
very soon.